Before we start, I just want to say I finished my Power Girl cosplay. I'm so happy it's done. I have literally done nothing but sew for the past 3 weeks. Now I kind of can't wait until LSCC is over just so I can take some time to read books and play games and do things that aren't cosplay related. Anyway, back on topic, and it's a little bit of a serious one this week, sorry guys. So, I don't really talk about this much, but I figured I should do a video just to help make things make a little more sense and everything. I have chronic fatigue syndrome, which is often shortened to CFS or ME. ME stands for myalgic encephalopathy. There's a reason it's shortened to ME, okay? CFS is an illness that no one really knows that much about. There's no definitive test, there's no cure, there's no medicine to help it get better, and while you can learn to manage it to have a relatively normal life, it never really goes away. I was diagnosed when I was 12, and while some kids that young can actually get past it and get to a point where it no longer really affects them, I wasn't one of those kids. It's hard to explain CFS, especially as the doctors don't really know that much about it, but from what I can gather, and don't quote me on this because I'm not a medical professional, it's a dysfunction of the mitochondria, so your body doesn't really process or produce energy properly. It's more than just being tired a lot, although that is a big part of it. It's basically, you know when you've had the flu and it feels like your entire body is made of lead and just getting dressed can leave you needing a nap? It's like that, but 24/7 and with a whole host of other symptoms involved. Everyone is different, but from personal experience, symptoms can include migraines, light sensitivity, muscle pains and spasms, constant nausea, lack of appetite, depression and panic attacks, unexplainable fevers, the list goes on. It's got to the point where I now leave it at least 2 weeks on any illness before going to see a doctor because I can never be sure if it's just the CFS acting up. Going through my teenage years with an illness like CFS was not easy. It's a difficult thing to explain to someone, especially as soon as I mention the word fatigue, whoever I'm talking to goes, "Oh, just get more sleep if you're that tired." If only it was that easy, my friend. I spent a lot of time off school, like, a lot. One of my proudest moments post-diagnosis was managing 5 half-days of school in the same week. I only did it once, and usually 2 half-days a week was a good week. I think I only went in like 3 times or something ridiculous like that in year 11. So I was basically a hermit until I left after my GCSEs, and if I hadn't started going to conventions, I would have literally no friends whatsoever. So for any of you who thinks that it sounds great to have an illness where you just get to sit at home and watch TV and sleep all day, think again. It gets boring very quickly. After nearly 7 years, I've learnt a lot of tricks to manage my CFS so I can live fairly normally and still do the things I want to do. I still relapse, take this December for example, and I still have bad days and symptoms and all of that joyous stuff. But I have more good days than I used to, and my bad days aren't as bad, and I'm lucky enough to have a job that mostly involves staying at home in my pyjamas for significant periods of time. So as much as it sucks, I'm kind of stuck with it, and to be honest, there are much worse illnesses I could have. Like I said, I don't really talk about this much outside of family and friends. No one wants to hear how crappy someone else is feeling, and I could talk until I'm blue in the face about how it feels and still probably wouldn't describe it accurately. It's one of those things that doesn't really make sense to someone who hasn't experienced it, and it doesn't really present visibly in any way. Plus, I only tend to do things and see people on my good days, so even the people I know well don't really have an accurate representation of the illness. Most of my teenage angst over the years has come from my frustration at being unable to explain to the people around me how I feel and why I can't do what they're asking me to do. Even now, it's still a sore spot for me. The best description of CFS that I've found is called the spoon theory, which I'm going to do a video about next week so I can explain it. It sounds weird, I know, but it makes sense, I promise. If you want to learn more about CFS, then Google is your friend and there's a lot of helpful information on the net, but I'll put a few links down below for you. If this is all sounding worryingly familiar and you think you might have CFS, then my best advice, do your research, take it to your GP, then go and contact your nearest CFS specialist department if you have one. And don't expect a diagnosis right off the bat. It took me 6 months to get diagnosed, and that's considered fairly quick. With an illness that has no visible signs to test for, it's basically a matter of ruling out everything else it might be. Fellow CFS sufferers, if you're watching, you are wonderful and fantastic for doing what you do, and for God's sake, don't ever stop. Small victories are still victories, and I promise you they do get bigger. If you're struggling with your bad days or just want to celebrate a good one, then please feel free to talk to me on Twitter and Tumblr. But spoon theory next week, and then I promise I'll get off my angsty soapbox and get back to my regularly scheduled fandom nonsense. Until then, thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye! There is a reason I don't film in daytime, and that is it.